So tell us just about that. What led you to saying yes to I'm going out there?
Yeah, so I was. I think I acknowledge that I've been blessed to be in a financial position, in a career position, a skill set position, and a stability in my home to be in a really good place despite me doing very little to truly earn that. And I think as a religious person, I felt like in front of God, we all have an obligation, given the skill sets and the things that we have, to try to do good with it. And then for the last 9 months or so, we've watched the terrible things unfold in Gaza, and watched children get injured and families get torn apart. And I felt like we cried enough about it here in 9 months, but crying is only effective in prayer. But at a certain point, we got to do something. And so I was blessed to be given the opportunity to do something. When Med Global, which is the organization that I worked with, opened a door for me to go, I thought there was no way I couldn't take the opportunity to go help.
When you landed and stepped foot, what was the reality of seeing it on video and seeing photos and now seeing it with your own eyes?
Yeah. So I'm going to describe a little bit of how we get in.
Okay.
So before May 6th, most of the humanitarian missions to Gaza went in through Egypt. You'd fly into Cairo, you go drive north to the Rafah border, and you were given access to Rafah. Since May 6th, when Rafah was invaded, which is the southernmost strip of Gaza, it changed. In fact, the trip I was supposed to go on in May initially was canceled when things changed, and instead you have to go from Amman, Jordan, and drive to the King Hussein Bridge, or Allenby Bridge it's called, drive through occupied Palestine in the West Bank, through Jerusalem, and then eventually get to Kerem Shalom crossing. Every one of those steps is heavily guarded. The process is intimidating and a little scary as a humanitarian aid worker. You're made to feel consistently every step of the way that things could change in a minute. You can get declined at any step in that process. You're not guaranteed access. And then you're let in. What you're allowed to take in with you is extremely restricted as well. When people say humanitarian aid is let in, it's a lie. I watched it with my own eyes. I watched lines of trucks not be allowed in. I personally had multiple suitcases from wonderful people here in Arkansas of donations and gifts and medical supplies that were left in Jordan because they were declined at the border. I was only allowed to bring in one suitcase for an entire month, and at the end it ended up being mostly stuff I needed for myself to get by for a month because of the situation there. When we got through the Kerem Shalom and drove through Rafah to the middle area, which is where the hospital was that I worked at, everything that I had seen on my telephone, and TikTok and Instagram and Telegram and these other alternate sources of media where you get little snippets of maybe what's going on, it's worse. Nothing does it justice. The entire southern part of Gaza has been razed to the ground. There isn't a building untouched in Rafah. It feels like a zombie apocalypse. There's no other way to describe it. And the entire time I tried to process what was happening, I thought about the people that used to live here. Every one of those homes was a home like this one. People had hopes and dreams and wishes for the future, and their kids were in school trying to live normal lives, and now they either are gone or they live in tents somewhere else in displaced Gaza. And so the situation is much worse than I could have ever imagined.
I'm sure the whole trip was hard, but if you had to pinpoint a certain day or a certain time or a certain family, what was the hardest part?
You're exactly right. Every day was terrible, and in fact, I would say almost worse than the day before because it was just compounded. 3 days before I left, another school was bombed by the IDF, and many children came in simultaneously as a mass casualty. This was a daily occurrence, but it was different because so many children came in such a short period of time. The trauma bay, which was not a trauma bay originally, it's been converted to one, was about 20 by 20 kind of a room, and it was full of children on the floor because we didn't have enough stretchers. The 3 stretchers we did have had multiple children on top of each one in different stages of dying. We didn't have enough machines to breathe for them if they needed ventilators from inhalational injury. There's a picture I took in my mind that will never go away of a little girl who was completely burned from head to toe, who was turned on her side, trying to feel for her brother, it seemed, or some relative who was laying next to her, intubated, another child, feeling for him, looking for comfort. That moment will be seared in my memory forever because it was almost inevitable that she would die in the hours to come because we didn't have enough machines to breathe for people. And the way that airway burn injuries work is they progress pretty rapidly. And it's just one story. The worst part is we get the news about the numbers, and the numbers, they aren't numbers. Like these are little kids whose parents are, their whole lives are gone, just like you could imagine one of ours would if we'd lost one child, and they're losing their entire families. It was a devastating experience from that perspective. The trauma associated with explosions and bombs is one thing. I was not prepared at all for the burns because there's nothing you can do in that environment. There's no wound care, there's no burn centers, there's some gauze and not enough pain medicine to go around.
Being in that position, going out here to help, and to not be able to have the resources to actually help, how helpless did you feel?
I felt hopeless and helpless. There was a moment on that day where I stood around me and heard mothers crying and children screaming in agony, and I realized there was nothing I could do. I was never trained, nobody's ever been trained for this. I'm sure that there's a trauma surgeon out there somewhere who's had the experience to know what to do. I didn't. I was helpless, and my skills that I spent decades trying to learn meant nothing in the face of the overwhelmed infrastructure of healthcare that exists there. I wasn't prepared for that emotionally, mentally, or from a medical skill perspective. It was a feeling. I actually, in that moment, stepped away. I stepped away because I didn't know what to do. And then I decided I was just going to go back and try to hold some hands and put my hand through some hair just to make somebody feel good for a couple of seconds because I didn't know what else to do.
Fear. Talk to me about fear with these bombs.
Yeah.
Hearing drones.
Yeah. So I think there's almost like this. The human brain has a way of coping and just kind of ignoring reality in these quick moments of acute trauma. But today, being back in America, where we take for granted feeling so secure, having air conditioning and with water that's clean, and being able to hug my kids knowing they're safe. 24/7 drones above us. We never. I was walking outside just a few minutes ago and heard the lawnmower of my neighbor as they did their lawn. That's the sound. So imagine that buzzing constantly, but instead of it being innocent like a lawnmower, it comes with the knowledge that it could mean that it's coming, that the next bomb is going to be dropped, and the entire pediatric population in Gaza is traumatized. They have a exaggerated startle reflex. If you walk in any portion of the courtyard where the kids are running around, you see them look up in the sky anytime there's a loud noise. You see them jump with any loud noise. I don't know how you come back from even when it all stops. I don't know what that means for them in their futures and their lives when all you've ever known, first behind the wall before this started, and now for 9 months, the daily risk to life and limb, seeing what they've seen. I saw it for a month, and I'm an adult with some coping mechanisms and some grit that we learn through training and careers. These are 5-year-olds watching their siblings and their peers be blown apart. I don't know what comes of them.
When did you leave, and how long were you?
Yes, I was there for just about under a month. It was supposed to be a month, but part of the strategy, it seems, is to make it as hard as possible to get in, and so dates change constantly. My group was supposed to be a group of 6 or 7 physicians and healthcare and humanitarian aid workers, and by the time it was time to go, the dates had changed so much there was no way anybody could go, and I was a one-man mission. It was with Med Global, at least. There were some other NGOs on the ground, and I met wonderful physicians from the UK and the States and Australia and Jordan and Oman who were coming and doing similar work to me. There's many people who want to go. they're just not allowed in. And so, yeah, I was there for just about a month.
So who you went with, that's not who you were there with?
No, I was alone. I was alone with Med Global. I did find, you find your people, right? And so I found people in Gaza that became my people, that you leaned on, health doctors that have been doing this for 9 months that know way more about trauma than I'll ever know in my life based upon experience. I met people who will be my brothers and sisters forever based on this experience, both from Gaza and abroad. I think what you find in these little moments of terror and horribleness is you find beautiful people, right? The people who go to help, the people who are there persevering and being resilient and showing resistance just by surviving. You find people with amazing humanity in the most inhumane circumstances.
How much was your family on your mind?
All the time, mostly because I kept getting messages from everybody also, right? So I think the burden of knowing that I stressed out some people that I really love was obviously difficult. My wonderful wife was very patient with me. My mom, I think, called the poor lady who organizes the organization maybe every other day to make sure I was okay. Communicating was really difficult there, unfortunately. You can't communicate through normal cellular service. There's no cellular service in Gaza, essentially, and so you rely on intermittent Wi-Fi with intermittent electricity. It's hard to imagine. It's like a dark space. The entire infrastructure is gone. There's sewage in the street. There's no clean water. It's intermittent whether you get water at all. So it's definitely it was definitely an extra burden to know how many people were worried about me. And yesterday, like I said, when I came back from the airport and there was this large group of people waiting for me, I felt wonderful that they cared about me, but definitely felt bad that I had added stress to some people I love, for sure.
Take me to July 6th, the bombing of the school, 16 people killed, over 50 injured that day.
Yeah, so that, we would hear the bombs drop. We could feel the building shake. It was Gaza's just not that big. It's slightly bigger than the city of Little Rock, right? So it's 2.2 million people. I think there's 200,000 people in Little Rock, give or take. There's 2.2 million people in Gaza, and they got pushed north from Rafah and they got pushed south from Gaza City, and so everybody's in this middle area. And so the school was just in the Nusayrat camp, which was quite close to us, and we heard the bombs drop. We knew that it was close enough that they were going to come to our hospital. There's 3 hospitals functioning. And we stood up on the balcony of the ICU, me and a couple other physicians, waiting for the ambulances to roll in. And it takes about 45 minutes, because it takes about 20 minutes for people to start getting pulled from the rubble. And it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to get to the hospital because of how difficult it is to navigate. And we heard the screeching of the ambulances and the ambulance sirens, and we all rushed out to the front of the hospital waiting for people, and just child after child after child came in, many dead on arrival. I heard the number 16. There's a lot of debate about the numbers, how many people are actually dead. I can promise you from firsthand experience, and this is not an emotional response, it's based upon my touching these people, the numbers are significantly higher than what we've heard. The Lancet Journal came out with the article, right, that said 189,000. I can promise you when it's said and done, it'll be higher than this. And the reason is because when you don't die on the day of the bombing, they don't consider it a death of the bombing. But if you die from a wound infection 2 days later because there's no medical supplies, and we can't clean your wound properly, and you got the wound because of the bombing that happened 2 days ago, you're not included within the statistics currently. When you die because you can't get to dialysis, because the dialysis machines have all been destroyed, they don't include you within the numbers of those who were killed from the bombing. And when you die from cancer because you can't get the chemotherapy you were getting before the war and you can't get it anymore, you're not included within the numbers. But all of those people who die from their chronic medical conditions, along with the trauma and the post-traumatic injuries that are associated with wound infections and sepsis and respiratory problems from all the dust in the air, we're talking about a few 100,000 people easily. When the dust settles after all this, and people are finally allowed in to see what's happening, and the surveyors from the international community can get in there, we'll look back on the day and think about how silly we were that we were debating about these small numbers when the numbers were 10 times more.
Yeah. You don't think about that.
No.
Wow. You just think about the chaotic moment, and like you said, the day of.
I'll give you a specific.
Yeah.
Nasser Hospital, which is one of the hospitals left, it was one of the hospitals that was invaded by the IDF a few months before I got there. And Nasser Hospital was partially damaged, but the area of the hospital that was specifically notably destroyed was the dialysis center. Every dialysis machine was specifically, a bullet was put through it, it was destroyed. And there's only one reason to do that, and it's because you gave a death sentence to anybody on dialysis. There is, from my perspective, and again, I'm a lay person, I'm a doctor, I'm a humanitarian aid worker, I don't think complexly about strategy and military strategy, but to a lay person, to watch every building get damaged, and to watch these kind of specific attacks on healthcare infrastructure, it just feels like all part of the plan, right? Make Gaza unlivable. And right now, unless we find a way of making it stop, it'll be unlivable. It'll be unlivable. Nobody can live there in the situation that currently happens.
Do you see a way happening anytime soon?
I think there's, I don't know the answer 3 steps from now. I just know the answer in this moment. And it was the same answer I gave 2 weeks ago when you saw me, which is the bleeding has to stop now. I've been on many other medical missions, but never one where the population we were treating was trapped. You know, they're not allowed out. Anybody who says, why don't they just leave? They're not, that's not an option. There's tanks to the south of them and there's tanks to the north of them, and they're red zones, which means if you walk in the street, you'll be shot, right? If you go in any one of those directions. And that's not just hyperbole. We got patients who came back. What were you doing? I was just trying to get to my house to get my clothes, and a quadcopter came and shot me. This is first-hand testimony, not some hearsay. I was there on the ground to say this. They can't get out, and the trauma is ongoing. The bombs are still dropping today. I'm here, and I know if I were there, I'd still be hearing what I heard every day I was there, which I'd hear the buzz above my heads, and occasionally the sound of explosions in the distance. And so the bleeding has to stop now. Step 1 is the only answer I know. I don't know the other answers. The targeting of healthcare workers needs to stop. The targeting of humanitarian aid workers needs to stop. The imprecision of military tactics that kill masses of children and women and unarmed civilians needs to stop yesterday. That's the only step I know right now. Step 1 is you got to stop the bleeding now, and then let's assess what happens next. Sorry. Yeah.
One last question. How did this, as I mentioned on the text, how did this experience reshape you or give an outlook on parenthood, being a father?
You know, I was carrying my son back from prayer just now, and he was tired, and he said, you know, the spoiled little kid, right? He said, they picked me up, right? And I carried him back to the car, and all I could think about was how many parents carried their kids in their hands in pieces. You know, we saw exposed brain matter. I saw eviscerated children. I saw kids without limbs. And their parents all had the same look on their face. It's just help me fix this problem. Help me. They'd come to us in the hospital hoping we could fix something that was unfixable. And you know, I think understanding just how lucky we are in America to know that our kids are safe in that way, it should also turn something else in us that tells us, like, why is it not that way for the Palestinian people? Why is it okay for all of us to sit back quietly and make it like it's not our problem when it truly is? That there are people who don't have the luxury of carrying our kids back from prayer comfortably and safely, and never having to worry about the chances of carrying our kids in pieces to the hospital, knowing that there's no way they'd survive. You know, those images will you know, I'm a doctor, I'm a pediatrician. I've seen kids die more than most people would ever like to see, and it's always terrible no matter who it is. And one child dying for a pediatrician, that lasts with us for months. We think about those kids. This was tens of kids every day. And so, yeah, from a fatherhood perspective, I think part of being a man and part of being a father is making sure other fathers don't ever experience that. Right? And right now we're allowing that to happen. If I take away anything, it's that I won't stop pushing to figure out how to make that stop.
Would you go back?
If my wife closes her ears, of course, yeah, I think you can't leave that place without feeling 2 things. One is an immense amount of guilt and shame, and the feeling that you betrayed them, because we get to leave, right? We had a rough month, and they hug us, and oh, if you met those people, you know, they were giving me gifts. I'll show them to you later. They were giving me gifts. They have nothing, right? They don't have food tomorrow, and they're giving me gifts because they're grateful that we came for a couple weeks, and so you feel immense amount of guilt and shame, right, for leaving, because you get to leave, and they don't. And the second feeling is that you have to find a way to get back here, because the people there are special. Again, I've done mission work all around the world, and every one of these stories is sad. Every one of the refugee work mission trips I've done it's terrible in its own way, but there's nothing like what's happening there. There's nothing like those people. Every time you talk to them, they say, Alhamdulillah, all praise be to God, it's going to be okay, no matter what happened yesterday. And the amount of faith and strength and resilience and sadness and compassion all mixed into one person, it's every person in Gaza has that story. So no doubt I will take an opportunity the moment it presents itself to try to go back and help, yeah.
To come back and see the response from your family, and what was it to finally be able to hold your wife and your kids in your arms again?
There's, it comes with the bittersweetness, right, that I get to do that. I have the honor and the privilege to come back to a wonderful place with the sweetest family, and kids that cling to me and missed me, and a community that's so great here. I felt embarrassed a little bit, right? And my wife knows that about me, so she knew that she wouldn't tell me about it before it happened, because I would tell her not to let it happen. But I felt embarrassed only because I think most of us would try if we knew how bad it was. If people just knew how bad it was, I think there's so many of us that would go. I think it's built into who we are as human beings, many of us as Americans, and people in the South that are hospitable, want to take care of people and care about family and children. I think that if we just knew it, what I saw, that it's built into all of us, that we'd go, right? So it wasn't that I was special, or that I just had the door open and my eyes were open. I got to see things that nobody else saw, and I felt a certain way, and God opened the door for me to get there. And I think so many people would do the same if they just knew how bad it was. If they knew they could make a difference that way, I think so many would go. So I felt embarrassed because it wasn't that I was doing something particularly unique. It was the door was open, and I just stepped through it. But it wasn't anything more than that. Yeah.
Dr. Ahmad, is there anything you feel like I missed that you would like to share?
As you think about so many things to say. I think the only way it's possible for the world to allow the type of carnage and destruction and the type of violence and the sheer number of children that have died and the sheer number of women and unarmed civilians to just be annihilated and tortured and suffer is if we dehumanize them, if we make them less than human, if we think of them not like our own family members, that they don't have the same hopes and wishes and dreams, and that they don't have the same feeling of anxiety about their kids growing up in a safe place, if they don't think about tomorrow being better than today. The only way it's possible for us to allow that to happen is if we take the Gazan people and make them less than us. And if we don't lose sleep for them, it's because we've allowed that evil thought to get into our head that they aren't worth losing sleep over. And I think that's it's so. I met people that deserve more than that. Everybody I met there deserved more than being ignored and being dehumanized. They deserve so much more. So if I were to leave with any message, it's only by the grace of God are we here and not there. And if it was us there, what would we want the people far away in a world where maybe we'd never know our names? What would we want them to think of us? And at least just think of them deserving of respect and human dignity.